Rachel Porter's sudden disappearance on a rain-soaked night in Brooksville seemed like a tragic mystery, but when investigative journalist Erin Moriarty uncovered a chilling trail of abandoned belongings, hidden maps, and a predator who had evaded capture for years, the hunt for answers turned into a race to stop a serial abductor before he claimed another life. On a rainy March evening in the quiet town of Brooksville, the streets were almost empty, save for the occasional car passing through. The rain came in steady sheets, blurring the yellow streetlights and turning the cracked sidewalks into reflective pools. Rachel Porter, a 29-year-old art teacher at the local community center, was scheduled to teach her Thursday evening class, a highlight for many of her students. But when the clock struck 6 and Rachel hadn't arrived, the center's staff began to grow uneasy. She was always punctual, often arriving early to set up her paints and supplies. By 8 o'clock, her absence could no longer be brushed off as a delay. Calls to her phone went unanswered. Messages were left unread. By 9, a volunteer decided to drive past Rachel's small apartment to see if her car was there. It wasn't. Just after 10, a jogger stumbled upon a vehicle on a dirt road several miles out of town. The car was Rachel's. The driver's door hung wide open, rain pooling on the leather seat. The keys were still in the ignition. Her phone lay face up on the passenger seat, the screen cracked, buzzing faintly with missed calls and messages. There were no signs of a struggle, no broken glass, no scattered belongings, yet something about the scene felt wrong. The road itself was almost never used, winding deep into farmland and eventually fading into a forest trail. News of the discovery spread quickly through Brooksville, and with it came a growing sense of dread. Rachel wasn't just a teacher. She was someone who had touched nearly every corner of the community. She volunteered at animal shelters, painted murals for local businesses, and helped organize the town's seasonal art fairs. To think she had vanished in the middle of a rainy night didn't make sense. The police arrived, securing the area and questioning anyone who might have passed through. Most residents said they hadn't been near the road in months. The rain washed away potential tracks, and the lack of surveillance cameras in the area made the timeline almost impossible to pin down. When Erin Moriarty, a nationally known investigative journalist, arrived in town 2 days later, she immediately sensed that this was no random disappearance. The setting was too deliberate, the details too clean. To Erin, the open car door and untouched belongings spoke not of chaos, but of control. Whoever had taken Rachel had done so with precision, and Erin was determined to find out why. Erin began by retracing Rachel's final known movements. Surveillance footage from a grocery store showed her leaving around 5:15 p.m., carrying a single paper bag and smiling at the cashier. From there, her trail seemed to vanish. Erin requested access to older police files in the surrounding counties, searching for patterns in unsolved missing persons cases. Within days, she found 2 that made her pause, one from 4 years ago in the neighboring town of Milford, and another from 2 years ago in West Haven. Both involved young women disappearing near remote roads late in the day. In each instance, the victims' cars were found abandoned with personal belongings left behind: wallets, phones, even grocery bags almost staged, as if to tell a story without words. The police reports on those older cases describe different suspects, different leads, and ultimately different dead ends. But Erin's instinct told her the similarities were too strong to ignore. She built a detailed timeline, noting that all 3 disappearances happened in early spring, within the same 60-mile radius. More disturbingly, all 3 women had reported feeling watched in the weeks before they vanished. In Rachel's case, one of her students had mentioned seeing a man parked outside the community center more than once, his face partially hidden by a baseball cap. Erin dug deeper and discovered a name that kept resurfacing in whispers: David Mullen. He had a record of harassment charges, though none had ever led to conviction. Years ago, a restraining order had been filed against him by a woman in another county, but it expired before the case could proceed. He had moved often, never staying in one place long enough for law enforcement to build a solid case. Erin obtained an old mugshot through a contact, and the resemblance to witness descriptions was unsettling. Late one night, Erin reviewed aerial maps of Brooksville and surrounding towns, circling every rural road with minimal traffic. She began layering them over the locations of the older disappearances. A chilling pattern emerged: each site was within a 20-minute drive of an abandoned property connected to Mullen's family. These weren't random hunting cabins or sheds. They were secluded spots, long forgotten by anyone except someone who knew the land well. Erin's notes filled with questions that the police seemed unwilling to pursue. Why had no one connected the missing women before? How had Mullen managed to slip through every time? For Erin, the answer was simple. He was careful, patient, and skilled at finding women alone in vulnerable moments. And she knew if she didn't act quickly, Rachel Porter might become just another cold case on that list. Erin's search for answers led her down miles of winding backroads until she reached a section of forest where cell service dropped to nothing. Here, tucked behind a wall of overgrown pines, she found a property listed as belonging to a deceased man, Harold Mullen, David Mullen's uncle. The house itself was nothing more than a weather-beaten shell, its windows broken and its porch sinking into the soil. But behind it stood a collapsed barn, its roof caved in and its doors barely hanging on their rusted hinges. Locals claimed no one had been there for years, yet Erin noticed fresh tire tracks cutting through the mud. They led directly to the barn. She stepped carefully, her boots crunching on gravel and splintered wood. The air smelled of damp earth and decay, and every sound seemed amplified in the stillness. Inside the barn, the floor was littered with debris, old tools, rotting hay, rusted buckets. But buried among the clutter were items that didn't belong to this place. A faded sneaker with a snapped lace, a floral scarf coated in dust, and near the back wall, a silver bracelet engraved with the initials R.P. Rachel Porter. Erin's pulse quickened. She photographed everything, careful not to disturb the evidence, then called her producer to relay the location. When police arrived, they swept through the property but found no trace of Mullen himself. It was as if he had vanished into the trees. They collected the bracelet and other belongings, bagging them for forensic analysis. Still, there was no clear sign of where Rachel had been taken. The discovery raised even darker questions. Were these belongings trophies, or simply remnants left behind after something worse? Erin feared the answer. In the days that followed, rumors spread through town. Some claimed to have seen Mullen walking along an old logging road late at night, his clothes soaked as if he had crossed a river. Others swore they had heard shouting in the woods, but dismissed it as the wind. The more Erin dug, the more she realized Mullen had spent years learning how to disappear without a trace. He knew which paths avoided main roads, which creeks erased footprints, and which empty houses could hide someone for weeks. Though the police widened their search area, leads dried up almost immediately. For Erin, the barn was not the end of the trail, it was a warning. Mullen was close watching, and now aware that someone was hunting him. Months passed with no sign of Rachel, and the case began to lose traction in the media. But Erin refused to let it fade. She continued to chase every lead, working through tip lines and speaking with locals who claimed to know the backroads better than anyone. Her persistence paid off when a hunter, out checking his traps in late autumn, reported seeing a man living in an old hunting cabin about 15 miles from the collapsed barn. The description, tall, weary build, scruffy beard, matched Mullen exactly. The cabin was deep in the woods, accessible only by a single dirt trail hidden behind a row of pines. When investigators arrived with Erin documenting the operation, the place appeared abandoned at first glance. The roof sagged, the windows were clouded with grime, and vines curled up the walls. But inside, the air told a different story. It was stale but warm, with a faint trace of burned wood in the fireplace. In the corner sat a pile of clothing, none of it fitting the same person. And next to it, a collection of wallets and IDs from women who had been reported missing over the past decade. In the center of the room was a locked chest, heavy and scratched from years of use. When the lock was broken, its contents froze everyone in place. Inside were personal diaries, photographs, and small trinkets, rings, hair clips, and necklaces, each belonging to women Mullen had likely stalked or abducted. Among them were a set of car keys that, when tested, matched Rachel Porter's abandoned vehicle. There was no sign of Rachel herself, but Erin knew they were closer than ever. Perhaps most disturbing were the hand-drawn maps found tucked inside a weathered notebook. Each map detailed remote routes, abandoned properties, and isolated rest stops. Several were marked with small red X's, and one map in particular showed an area near a disused quarry just over the state border. Erin suspected these were not random places, but planned locations, sites Mullen had scouted for potential abductions or hiding spots. The evidence was overwhelming, yet Mullen had slipped away once again, leaving only his belongings and a trail of fear. Erin released her findings publicly, forcing law enforcement to broaden the search beyond Brooksville. Her warning was clear. Mullen wasn't hiding forever, he was preparing to move, and if they didn't act quickly, Rachel's time was running out. The break came unexpectedly on a cold January morning when a long-haul trucker spotted a man hitchhiking near a rest stop along Interstate 74. The man's face was partially hidden by a hood, but the trucker recognized him instantly from a news alert. David Mullen. Without slowing, the trucker called 911, providing location details and direction of travel. Within 20 minutes, law enforcement swarmed the area, blocking both exits. Mullen was taken into custody without a struggle, his hands trembling as they were cuffed. At the station, investigators confronted him with the evidence from the cabin: the maps, the stolen belongings, the keys to Rachel's car. Mullen admitted to taking Rachel, but refused to reveal where she was. He spoke in clipped sentences, offering nothing beyond vague statements that only deepened the mystery. Erin knew the clock was ticking. Every hour without finding Rachel could mean the difference between life and death. The breakthrough came when a forensic analyst studying the hand-drawn maps noticed a faint smudge on one page, a partial shoe print, pressed into the paper, likely from a damp boot. The soil sample embedded in the print matched the mineral composition of a disused quarry about 30 miles away. A search team was dispatched immediately, with Erin following close behind. The quarry was silent, its water pit frozen over, the air sharp with the smell of wet stone. At first, nothing stood out. Then, near the far end of the site, officers discovered a rusted hatch hidden beneath a sheet of corrugated metal. Inside, a narrow stairwell descended into an underground storage chamber. The air was stale, heavy with mildew, and the beam of a flashlight revealed a small makeshift room, an old cot, a bucket of water, and in the corner, Rachel Porter. She was alive but frail, her eyes adjusting slowly to the light after months in darkness. Wrapped in a blanket, she was carried to safety, her voice too weak to speak more than a few words. Medical teams confirmed she had been malnourished but would recover physically. The emotional scars, however, would take far longer to heal. Mullen was charged with multiple counts of kidnapping, attempted murder, and unlawful imprisonment, his trial drawing nationwide attention. Erin's relentless pursuit of the truth had not only saved Rachel's life but also linked Mullen to at least 4 other cold cases. For Brooksville, the nightmare had ended, but for Erin, the case was a reminder that some predators are only caught because someone refuses to stop looking.